The fisherman who brought something from the sea that wasn't human. The sea has always been a place of mystery, both feared and revered by those who live near it. It provides food, sustenance, and life, but it also holds secrets far older than mankind itself. For centuries, fishermen have returned with stories that sound more like myths than reality. Whispers of shadows moving beneath their boats, strange lights glowing in the black waters, or voices that call out with tones too human to belong to any fish. But among all the stories told, one tale stands above the rest. The story of a fisherman who brought something from the sea that wasn't human. This fisherman was not a man of wealth or renown. He lived in a small, isolated village by the shore, where the houses clung to the rocks as if they too were afraid of being swallowed by the waves. The people there depended entirely on the ocean. Every day they pushed their fragile wooden boats into the surf, chasing after fish to feed their families, and every night they prayed for safe return, for the sea was merciless to those who disrespected it. They said the ocean had a soul, that it watched those who dared to enter its domain, and that it punished arrogance with tragedy. The fisherman of this story was named Elias. He was a man known for his persistence, though not always his success. He was often the last to come back to shore, his net sometimes empty, sometimes half filled with scraps the other men had overlooked. Yet he was never discouraged. His wife had passed away years earlier, and he lived alone, with nothing but his faith in the sea to keep him company. The ocean had become his confidant, his enemy, and his friend. When he rowed his small boat into the deep, he often spoke to the waves as if they could answer, and sometimes he swore they did. One evening, long after most of the men had returned with their catch, Elias remained at sea. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the sun had set into a red horizon that painted the waves with fire. The air smelled of salt and storm, but Elias was determined. He rowed farther than ever before, his arms aching, his net dragging behind him. He told himself he would not return empty-handed this time. He prayed aloud, whispering words into the night. "Lord, guide my hands, sea, grant me a gift." His voice was almost lost in the rising wind. Then, the net grew heavy. At first, Elias thought it must be a school of fish, a sudden miracle after hours of failure. He pulled, straining against the weight, his muscles burning as the rope cut into his hands. The boat rocked dangerously, as if the sea itself was resisting his efforts. When at last the net broke the surface, he froze in terror. What he had caught was not fish. It was not anything he had ever seen before. In the tangled mesh of ropes and seaweed lay a figure, pale, slender, and strangely human. Its hair floated around its head like strands of kelp, and its eyes, though closed, seemed unnervingly large. Its skin glistened in the moonlight, too smooth, too perfect, like polished stone. And when Elias touched it, the body was cold, colder than the sea itself, as if the ocean had preserved it for centuries. For a long moment, Elias could not breathe. He had pulled something from the abyss, and he knew deep in his heart that it did not belong to this world. But then the figure stirred. The chest rose shallow at first, then deeper, as if it was breathing the night air for the first time. Elias stumbled backward in his small boat, nearly falling into the water. His heart thundered in his chest. The thing in his net opened its eyes, and in that moment Elias understood that he had brought something back from the sea that wasn't human, and that his life, and perhaps the lives of everyone in his village, would never be the same again. The eyes of the creature glowed faintly in the dark, like embers hidden beneath glass. They were not the eyes of a fish or even of a man, but something far older and more alien. Elias clutched the edge of his boat, torn between terror and awe. The waves slapped against the wood as if urging him to throw it back, to undo the mistake before it was too late. But Elias did not move. The creature blinked slowly, and when its lips parted, no words came, only a low sound, melodic yet broken, like the echo of a song carried across miles of ocean. Elias whispered a prayer, his trembling hands making the sign of the cross. "What are you?" he asked, though he expected no answer. The creature tilted its head as if it understood, then tried to rise from the net. Elias, acting on instinct, reached out and freed it from the tangled ropes. Its body was light, far lighter than a human's, as though it carried no weight of flesh, only the essence of water and shadow. It sat across from him in the boat, watching him in silence. Its presence made the air colder, and yet Elias could not look away. The storm above began to growl, thunder rumbling over the horizon. Lightning flashed, illuminating the vast emptiness of the sea. Elias rowed with desperate urgency, knowing he had to return before the storm consumed him, yet the creature made no attempt to leave. It remained seated, its gaze fixed on him, almost curious. Several times Elias thought about pushing it back into the water, but every time he raised his hand, something stopped him. Fear, fascination, or perhaps an unseen force binding his will. By the time he reached the shore, the village was nearly asleep. Only a few lanterns burned, flickering against the wind. Elias pulled his boat onto the sand and glanced around nervously. He knew that if anyone saw what he had brought, panic would spread. The elders would demand he cast it back into the sea, maybe even accuse him of bringing a curse upon them. So he made a choice. He would hide it. He draped his old fishing cloak over the creature and guided it quietly to his small home at the edge of the village. Inside, the flicker of his oil lamp cast shadows across the walls. The creature sat on the wooden floor, dripping salt water, staring at the fire as though it recognized the warmth but did not understand it. Elias offered it bread and water, but it did not eat. It only hummed softly, a sound that filled the room with both beauty and unease. That night, Elias barely slept. Elias. He sat in his chair, watching it, wondering what he had done. Outside, the storm raged, waves crashing violently as if the sea itself was demanding its treasure back. The next morning, the village gathered at the docks to inspect the damage from the storm. Several boats had been broken against the rocks, and the fishermen muttered about omens and punishments from the ocean. Elias said nothing. He felt the weight of his secret pressing against him like a tide. When he returned home, he found the creature standing at his window, staring longingly at the horizon. Its skin shimmered in the sunlight, and for a brief second, Elias thought he saw scales hidden beneath the smoothness. It turned its head toward him, and though it did not speak, he felt something press into his mind, an image of the sea, dark and endless, calling. From that moment forward, Elias's life began to unravel. Elias began to notice changes, subtle at first but undeniable. Each day he spent near the creature, he felt the pull of the sea growing stronger inside him. His dreams became vivid, filled with visions of vast underwater cities illuminated by strange, pulsating lights. He would wake drenched in sweat, his ears ringing with whispers in a language he did not know but somehow understood. The creature rarely moved from its place by the window, yet its presence filled the entire house, as if the walls themselves breathed with it. The villagers, too, began to notice Elias's odd behavior. He no longer joined them at the tavern, nor did he laugh or trade stories at the docks. His eyes seemed distant, as though always fixed on some faraway horizon. Rumors spread quickly in the village. Some said Elias had made a pact with the sea, that he had found gold hidden in its depths. Others whispered that he had gone mad from loneliness, speaking to shadows in his empty home. The truth, however, was far stranger. One night, as Elias sat in silence, the creature rose and approached him. Its movements were fluid, more like water than flesh. It reached out a slender hand and placed it on his chest. Elias's heart stuttered, not from fear, but from the overwhelming flood of images that entered his mind. He saw great storms devouring ships, titanic shapes moving in the blackness of the ocean floor, and eyes, countless eyes watching from the abyss. He gasped and fell to his knees, but the creature did not relent. It pressed deeper into his thoughts, leaving behind a single vision burned into his soul. The image of something rising from the sea, something ancient and terrible, something that demanded his obedience. The following day, Elias tried to push the creature back into the water. He led it down to the shore, his heart heavy with dread. "You don't belong here," he whispered, his hands trembling. But as soon as the waves touched its skin, it let out a cry, not a scream of pain, but a sound so mournful, so haunting, that Elias's knees buckled. He pulled it back instinctively, holding it in his arms like a child. Villagers watching from a distance saw him collapse on the sand, clutching something that shimmered in the light. They could not see clearly, but whispers began once more. Elias had truly gone mad. That night, Elias locked every door and shuttered every window. He sat in darkness, listening to the creature's soft humming, a melody that burrowed into his soul. He realized then that he was no longer in control. The creature was not his prisoner. He was its. It had chosen him, and he could not resist. His faith wavered. His prayers became hollow. Even when he clasped the old wooden cross that had belonged to his wife, he felt no comfort, only the endless pull of the deep. And still, the dreams grew worse. In his visions, Elias saw the villagers one by one, standing on the shore, their eyes glowing faintly like the creature's. He saw them walking willingly into the sea, their bodies vanishing beneath the waves as if answering a call. He saw his small village swallowed by silence, and above it all, the shadow of something vast rising from the depths. Every morning he awoke shaking, terrified of the future he felt creeping ever closer. The creature, however, watched him with calm, knowing eyes, as if it had already seen what was to come. The whispers in the village grew louder. People began to avoid Elias entirely, crossing the street when they saw him, muttering prayers when he passed. Children were told not to approach his home, and old men spoke of curses that had once fallen upon villages that defied the ocean. A sense of dread spread like a sickness, and with each passing day the sea grew more violent. Nets came back empty, storms arrived without warning, and the waves carried strange objects to the shore. Bones that did not look human, shells shaped like faces, and seaweed that writhed as if alive. Elias knew the villagers blamed him, though none dared confront him directly. His isolation became complete, and he began to accept it. He no longer cared for their stares or their words. His world had shrunk to the size of his home, where the creature lingered like a silent shadow. But deep inside, he still fought. He wanted to resist its hold, to remember who he had been before he dragged it from the sea. Some nights he would clutch his wife's old Bible and read aloud until his voice broke. But the words felt empty, their power drowned beneath the constant hum of the creature's presence. Then came the night when the creature finally spoke. Its voice was soft, almost childlike, but carried the weight of the ocean itself. "Elias," it said, pronouncing his name perfectly, though no human tongue could have shaped the sound. His blood ran cold. He turned toward it, his lips trembling, but no words came. The creature's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "The sea is calling," it whispered. "It waits for you. It waits for all of them." Its hand rose, pointing toward the village, and in that moment, Elias understood. This being was not alone. It was a messenger, a herald of something greater, something terrible that slept beneath the waves. Elias begged it to leave, his voice cracking with desperation. "Take whatever you want, but leave them be. Leave us in peace." The creature tilted its head, almost pitying him. "Peace is not the will of the deep," it replied. And with that, silence returned, leaving Elias shivering in the dark. The following days were filled with fear. Strange songs drifted across the water at night, melodies that no human could create. Villagers reported hearing voices in their dreams, calling them to the shore. A fisherman's wife awoke to find her husband standing knee-deep in the surf, his eyes blank, his mouth moving in a whisper she could not understand. Children began to hum unfamiliar tunes without knowing why, and the elders muttered that the sea was demanding a sacrifice. Elias knew it was only a matter of time before they discovered the truth, that he had brought this curse upon them. Yet even as guilt consumed him, he could not let go of the creature. There was something about it, something that made him believe it was not only a curse, but also a key to what he did not know. But the thought haunted him. Perhaps he had not caught it by accident. Perhaps the sea had chosen him. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Elias sat with the creature by the fire. It looked at him with eyes that seemed almost kind. "Why me?" Elias whispered. The creature leaned closer, its voice like a tide pulling him under. Because you were listening, because you were alone, and because the sea always takes what it is owed. The days that followed descended into a blur of dread and silence. Elias no longer bothered to join the other fishermen on the shore. His nets lay dry and unused, while the villagers fought to bring in meager catches from an ocean that seemed intent on starving them. Hunger gnawed at the people and desperation twisted their faces. They began to look toward Elias's house with suspicion, their fear slowly transforming into anger. It was only a matter of time before fear demanded action. But Elias's attention was consumed by the visions. Each night when the creature sang its soft, mournful hymn, his dreams became darker. He saw vast temples beneath the waves, their pillars carved with symbols no human hand could create. He saw throngs of pale, hollow-eyed figures kneeling before something too enormous to comprehend, its body coiled like an endless serpent, its eyes blazing like suns in the abyss. He woke trembling, but each morning he felt a strange longing, a pull toward the sea that no fear could smother. It was as if a seed had been planted inside him, and it was growing. One evening, the village elders knocked on his door. Their faces were grim, their voices heavy with centuries of superstition. "Elias," they said, "the sea is angry. We have seen the signs. We have felt its hunger. You must confess what you have done." Elias shook his head, denying them, though inside his heart thundered with guilt. The creature stood silently behind him, hidden in the shadows, its gaze piercing through the cracks of the door. The elders left with a warning. If the storms did not end, if the fish did not return, they would take matters into their own hands. That night, the storm came again, fiercer than ever. The wind howled like 1,000 voices, and the waves slammed against the rocks as though trying to shatter the very land. Elias clutched the creature's hand, begging it to stop the fury. "Please," he cried, "spare them. Spare the village." For the first time, the creature's expression softened. It leaned close, its words like water dripping into his mind. "I cannot. What comes cannot be stopped, only welcomed." Elias fell to his knees, weeping. He realized then that he had not saved the creature from the sea. It had allowed itself to be caught. He was not its rescuer. He was its vessel, its messenger, its chosen. The following morning, the village gathered in panic. Half the fishing boats were gone, claimed by the night. A child had disappeared from her bed, her footprints leading down to the shore where the waves had swallowed them. Desperation turned to fury, and the people marched to Elias's home, torches in hand. They demanded he come out, demanded he return whatever curse he had brought. Elias stepped outside, his eyes hollow, his body trembling. "It is too late," he whispered. "The sea has already claimed us." Before the mob could act, a sound rose from the shore, a song, deep and resonant, echoing across the water. The villagers froze, their torches flickering as the melody wrapped around them like chains. Slowly, against their will, they began to move. Men, women, children, all turned toward the sea, their feet dragging as if guided by unseen hands. Elias watched in horror and awe as his vision came true. The entire village walking toward the waves, their eyes blank, their voices joining the song. The creature stood beside him, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Do you see now?" it whispered. "This is the truth of the sea. It does not take, it calls, and all must answer." The villagers walked into the water one by one, their torches extinguished by the waves. Some struggled at first, but soon their resistance faded, their voices merging into the haunting chorus that filled the night. Elias tried to stop them, screaming, pulling at their arms, but each touch left him weaker, as if the call inside them was stronger than his will. In moments, the shore was empty, save for Elias and the creature. The sea roared, swallowing his world whole. Elias fell to his knees on the wet sand, sobbing. "Why me? Why did you choose me?" The creature knelt beside him, its face inches from his own. Its voice was soft, almost tender. "Because you listened, because you believed, and because the sea remembers those who are forgotten." Then it placed its hand on his chest once more. and Elias felt the last pieces of his humanity slip away. His lungs burned, not from the air, but from the sudden need for water. He stumbled forward into the surf, gasping, choking, until at last he plunged beneath the waves. The ocean embraced him. Darkness enveloped him, yet he could see. Cities of stone towers covered in barnacles, gates carved into the ocean floor. And there, waiting in the abyss, was the shape from his dreams. A colossal being, its body endless, its eyes burning with alien light. Elias realized then that he had not been cursed. He had been initiated. The sea had given him a gift, the chance to witness what lay beyond human understanding. He opened his mouth and instead of screaming, he sang. His voice joined the eternal chorus of the deep. Above, the village was gone. The houses crumbled under the force of the waves, leaving no trace of human life. To the world beyond, it would be as if they had never existed. Just another story, another legend of a town swallowed by the sea. But beneath the waves, their voices lived on, forever part of the hymn that had. Moral and reflection. This tale reminds us that the sea, like life itself, holds mysteries we cannot control or comprehend. Some truths are too vast for human hearts to bear, and some calls are impossible to resist. Elias's fate is a warning. Curiosity and loneliness can open doors that should remain closed. Yet it is also a reminder that silence does not mean absence. The sea listens, the sea remembers, and sometimes the sea answers. In the end, the fisherman who sought a simple catch found something beyond imagination. And perhaps the greatest terror of all is not what we see in the depths, but the realization that the depths are looking back at us. Thank you for watching this video. We ask that you subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, activate the notification bell to be notified of our uploads. See you in the next video.